Hi everybody, it's Ros from North Mayo Fine Art. In today's video I want to show you a different way of blending using only your pencils. Your pencils, the pencils that you use will usually contain either wax or oil, both of which blend really well together. So today I'm going to use, because I'm continuing with my sweet corn piece, I'm going to be using a combination of Polychromos and Prismacolor pencils. So I'm going to be working on just this small area here just to show you how you can actually blend them together without the need for a blending stump. So the first thing I'm going to do is just lighten up using my Derwent erase pencil. Just going to lighten up the lines just ever so slightly so that I can still see them but they're not quite so obvious. But with yellow being quite a light colour, it can be difficult to get rid of the pencil marks after you've coloured it. So I'm just going to lighten them up a touch now and then we'll be ready to start. So as always, I'm going to put my lightest colour down first. In this case it's yellow chrome, light chrome yellow. So again, I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm going to go on to this one first and just add a light layer of the colour. Now because I want to show you the technique, I'm going to actually do 3 of them at the same time. So I'm going to lay the first colour down on all 3 of them. So there we go, that's the first 3 on that row. And these are the 3 I'm going to concentrate on for this demonstration. So once I've got the lightest colour down, I'm not going to get my blending stump. I'm going to move straight on to my next colour, which is a Prismacolor and it's lemon yellow. And we're going to come straight down over the top of the first colour and just layer the colour straight over the top. Like so. Now again, I'm using a very light hand for this. I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm just moving the pencil around on top of the paper. There's number 2 done. And just put this colour down on number 3 and then we can move on again. And there we go. So that's the second colour been put down. So now what I'm going to do is there's some highlights, there's some very definite highlights in the reference photo. So now I've got some colour down, I've got a better idea of where the highlights are going to be. I have a Tombow eraser, Tombow mono eraser, and it's absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with the eraser and I'm just going to ever so lightly pull the colour just where the highlights are going to be back off, which is just here on this one. And just there on this second one. And you can see it's just lifting the colour off ever so gently, like that. And there's also just a small section right at the very top here that needs to be lightened up. Like that. Now you can see where the highlights are going to be. So what we need to do now is work around the highlights to add some more colour. So I'm going to start with the biggest piece of corn first this time. And I'm going to concentrate on going around the highlight, making sure not to add any colour to the highlighted area. We want that to stay nice and light, because once all the layers of colour are down on it, that's what's really going to show this piece off. So again, small circular motions, just getting this colour down, and again work around the highlight in this piece and work around it above it and get some colour down. And there's the third colour. Now what I want to do is I want to blend them so that the colours are seamless. At the minute you can see the orangey tone there is just ever so slightly brighter than the rest of it, and I don't want it to be. So we come back in with the colour that we've used before and we go back over with that colour. We go over the colour that we want to blend in together. And there we go. Now, you can clearly see on the reference photo there's very definite lines on these pieces of corn, and it's where the shadows are. So very, very lightly, I'm hardly touching paper at all, I'm just going around to enable myself to put the lines down where the shadows need to be. Now it might look a little bit patchy at this stage, but that's absolutely fine, because we're going to come back in and we're going to blend the patchiness out. And then there's a very, very definite line on this piece here, and it goes down just to before the highlight. And there's also just a little line just there in the shadow, because this is under this leaf. The leaf is casting this piece of corn in shadow. So you want to make sure the section underneath the leaf is the darkest area. So there we go. Now, like I said before, we can tidy up this bit of shadow. It looks quite patchy at the minute. Once we go back over with the yellow, it will blend the shadow out really nicely. Now we don't go up and down in straight lines, we do the circular motions. And you can see that it just smooths out those shadows so that you've still got the pigment down, but it's not showing up the harsh lines. And the same with these. And the same with the shadow under the leaf. You move around like so. Now, I can see that there is some dark yellow where this shadow is, so I'm going to put some of the dark yellow in there. Like that. I want to make sure we keep that highlight. There's also a little bit of shadow just down that side, but we don't need to use the grey for that because it's just a ever so slight shadow, so we can just use the very slightly darker shade of the yellow for it. And then under this highlight also is darker, like that. And then I'm going to add just a very small bit of orange just on this shadow here, like so. So I want the shadows to look quite rich and bright rather than very dull. There we go. And then now what I want to do is come back with a lighter shade of yellow, and I want to go just on the very, very edge of this highlight. Like that. I want to make sure everything's blended really nicely together. I'm going to add a small bit more orange to this shadow here because it's in shadow under the leaf, but I don't want it to be very, very dark grey, so I'll add some more of the orange. And then just a small bit more of this orange here. And then we'll go back to the lighter shade to blend that all in. Like that. Yeah. Let's go around the whole area, making sure that everything is nicely blended. There we go. And then we'll brush it off and we'll have a look at it. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got the shadows around this large piece of corn here, and then we've got the dip in this piece here. but I think we need to add just a touch more of the dark yellow, just on this one. Like so. And we also want this edge, but we want this portion here to be nice and light because that's where the light is actually hitting it. So we don't want to get any dark shadows in this centre area. And then what we're going to do in between the pieces of corn, they're obviously very dark, but what there also is some very dark orange in between. So we'll start with this one. And we're going to put the orange down first. Like that. And then once we've done that, I want to get I'm using a Prismacolor and it's Crimson Lake, and a Faber-Castell Warm Grey, and it's Warm Grey 4, because there's some lovely dark rich reddish tones in here as well, which really separates the different pieces of corn from each other and add an awful lot more interest to the piece than just plain grey shadows in between them. So now I've put the orange and the red down, now I'm going to go over with my grey, and because this larger piece of corn is higher than this middle piece, the darkest edge needs to be next to the largest piece of corn because that's casting the most shadow. Like so. Now I'll keep going around in a circular motion, but we need to have the darkest shadow underneath this large piece of corn. Like that. And again, because this piece is higher than the bottom piece, the darkest shadow is directly underneath that piece there. Now this isn't dark enough for my liking, so what I need to do is find a darker pencil. So I shall have a look in my pencil box. There we go. Now, I've got black. Now I don't want to put an awful lot of black down because that would make it very, very harsh. I just want a touch of black just to darken up the darkest areas. So under that leaf there, it's not only being cast in shadow by this piece of corn, it's also being cast in shadow by this section of leaf because it's underneath it. So this piece here is very dark, and then it lightens up from there up to this direction. This piece here just need to add the darkest shadow just underneath there, and then lift the pressure off whilst I do the rest of it. Like that. And there you have the first 3 pieces of corn running up this row here. And as you can see, I've got the shadows, I've got the highlights, and I've also got the shadows in between the pieces of corn. So this is another way of blending, and you can add it to your list of tips. If you've enjoyed watching this video, you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest and Twitter, and you can see more of my work there. Thanks for watching.